In this video, we shall continue rearranging the formula that include fractions. So on the left, I'll show you the process of solving these equations, and then on the right, we shall use the processes of solving equations to rearrange the formulas. So the first step on the left is to get rid of the denominator. The opposite of dividing by 7 is multiplying by 7. So you multiply the whole of this equation by 7 and multiply by 7 here as well. And 7 divided by 7 is 1, so that's gone. So what we end up with is a simpler equation, which will be 42 is equals to x minus 2. And then the next step is the opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. So we just add 2 on each side. And what you end up with is 44 is equals to x, or x is equals to 44. Now we can apply the same process, use the same process on the right hand side. So the first step will be multiplying by n. So you multiply the whole of this guy by n and multiply this guy by n. N and n cancel because n divided by n is 1. So what you're left with is ng is equal to x minus p. Now we want x on one side, so we need to get rid of the negative p. The opposite of subtracting p is adding p. So we can add p on each side. So add p on the right hand side, add p on the left. So this will be equal to 0 because negative p plus p is like negative 2 plus 2, which is 0. So we are left with this equation, ng plus p is equals to x. And you've already made x the subject. Example 2, just like in example 1, the first step is to get rid of the denominator. So multiply it by 8, and you have to do the same thing on the left hand side because it's an equation. It has to balance. 8 divided by 8, that will be equal to 1. So what you're left with is 24 is equal to 4x plus 2. So 24 is equals to 4x plus 2. Okay, so remember we want to be left with x alone. So we need to get rid of the 2. So subtract 2 on each side. So 2 minus 2, that will be equal to 0. So we are left with 22 is equals to 4x. Now the opposite of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4, and we have to perform the same operation on each side. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So basically x will be equal to 22 over 4. Or we can say that x will be equal to, we can simplify that to 11 over 2. Okay? All right. So we can apply the same process to the right hand side. So the first step will be multiplying by h, and we have to perform the same on the right hand side to balance the equation. And again, h divided by h is 1. So hw will be equal to tx plus r. The next step is subtracting r from each side because we want to be left with x alone. R minus r, that's 0. So we are left with hw minus r is equals to tx. And again, the opposite of multiplying by t is dividing by t. So divide by t, divide by t. 2 divided by t is equals to 1. And so we are left with x being equal to hw minus r over t. And that will be our final solution. Okay? I can just circle it. So that will be our final solution. Okay, example 3, rearrange the formula to make x the subject. So the process is the same. Start by multiplying by n And here n divided by n will be equal to 1. So we are left with nt is equals to bx minus a. And then the opposite of subtracting a is adding a. So we add a again, add a. So negative a plus a will be equal to 0, just like negative 2 plus 2 is equals to 0. So we are left with a simpler equation, which is nt plus a is equals to bx. The opposite of multiplying by b is dividing by b, so we divide by b on each side. So we shall be left with this equation, nt plus a over b is equals to x. Why? Because b divided by b will be equal to 1. All right, let's carry on to the next question. So the first step will be to multiply by 3 on each side. If you multiply by 3 on each side, so a third of 3 is 1, so these two cancel to give you 1. So what you end up with is 3c is equals to hx plus k. The next step will be, remember, we want to be left with the x on one side, so subtract k. And k minus k, that will be equal to 0. So you'll have 3c minus k is equals to hx. The opposite of multiplying by h is dividing by h, so we divide by h on each side. And therefore, you shall be left with this equation, 3c minus k over h will be equal to x.